Alright, in this project we're going to build a custom range slider. So with HTML5 you have an input type of range, but you can't really style it. You have to basically tell the browser that you don't want it to show, and then you can style the track, which is this part here, and you can style the thumb, which is this part here, on your own. So that's what we're going to do. And there's going to be quite a bit of CSS because we have to pay attention to which browser it's being shown on, because it's different in every browser. So we'll have the WebKit prefix for Safari and Chrome, MOZ for Mozilla, MS for Microsoft, and then we're going to add some JavaScript for this label so that it will show whatever the value is from 0 to 100. But not only that, it's going to calculate this is positioned absolute, and it's going to calculate the left value to move it along with the thumb, with the little ball here. All right, so it's just a nice little widget that you can use in your applications and stuff, in your UIs. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to get started on our custom range slider, and the HTML is going to be really simple. We're just going to use an input with a type of range, but the styling is pretty tricky because these show up different depending on the browser you're on. So we're going to have to add styles for all of the browsers. Basically, WebKit, using the WebKit prefix is going to be Chrome and Safari. The MOZ prefix is Firefox, and MS would be Microsoft Internet Explorer. And what I have here is Chrome on the side, but I also have Firefox as well, so we can check that too. So like I said, the HTML is pretty simple. So let's just say custom range slider, and we're just going to have an H2 here with same thing, custom range slider, and then let's do a class of range dash container, and inside here we'll have an input with the type of range. We don't need a name. The ID will be range, and we can set a min and a max on this. So basically where we want it to start, which is going to be 0, and then where we want it to end, which is going to be 100. And then underneath that, let's put a label for range, and I'm going to just hard code 50 in there for now. Ultimately, this is going to change depending on where this is. So if it's at the beginning, it'll be 0, at the end 100, and then anything in between. It's also going to be positioned right above this, and we want it to move along with this, so we'll need to use JavaScript to do that. But that's it for the HTML, very simple. For the CSS, let's bring in the Lato font. So family equals Lato, and let's apply that down here. And let's see. So like I said, we're basically going to have to style the track. So this is the track, this line here, and then this is the thumb. And we're going to have to style both of those differently for basically all of the different browsers. So the body here, I'm just going to keep the same. Let's move the heading up to the top. So I'm just going to position it absolute within the body, and then say from the top 10 pixels, just to move that up out of the way. And then for the range container, I want to position that relative, because the label, this right here, the number is going to be positioned absolute within it, and we're going to calculate the position in JavaScript so that it can follow the thumb here. Now we do have some base styles for the range. So let's say input, and we can target it with brackets and adding type equals range. And I'm going to set the width to 300 pixels, make it a little wider. And margin, I'm going to just do 18 pixels on the top and bottom, because the label is going to be above it. We want some space above it. So let's see, I'm trying to think. Before we can style this, because we can't actually style it as is, we need to basically make it go away, and we can do that with dash WebKit, and I'm talking about the track, the line. So if we do WebKit appearance and set that to none and save, you'll see that it goes away. Now we can actually style it on our own. But before we do that, let's style the label. Actually, you know what? Let's give this a background. we'll say, let's do background image, and we'll use a linear gradient. Let's say 135 degrees. And then for the color here, let's do hexadecimal value F5F 7FA. And that's from 0%. And then the next color, let's do hexadecimal C3C FE2 to 100%. There, so you can see that this is just white now, okay, because we did that WebKit appearance none. So I just want to, before we do the track, I want to style the label. I just want to put it above. It'll start off in the middle here. So we'll take the range, and let's say plus label. And for the label, we're going to set the background color to white, and let's position it. So I'm going to position it absolute within the range container, and we'll say we want it from the top negative 25 pixels, so that'll move it up, and we want it in the middle of the range, so we'll say from the left, let's do 110 pixels, and let's give it a width of 80 pixels, and padding, we'll do 5 pixels top and bottom. Let's text align to the center, and let's do a border radius 4 pixels, and let's add a little box shadow. So we'll do 0, 0 for the offsets, 5 pixels for the blur, RGBA, black, and 0.3. So that gives it a little box shadow. All right, so it starts off in the middle, right where the thumb starts, and ultimately when we add our JavaScript, we'll have it follow along this, but that's good for now. So now let's style the track, and this is only going to be for Chrome and Safari right now, because we're going to take the input range and then do : WebKit dash, and this is the track, so we want slider runnable track. That's what we're styling here. And I'm going to set the background to purple. So as soon as I do that, the color changes, but you'll see if I go to Firefox, it's still white because we need to use the MOZ prefix for that. But let's do Chrome first. So purple, let's do a border dash radius, and we'll set that to 4 pixels. And let's set the width to 100%. The height, I'm going to set that to 10 pixels, make it a little thinner, and set the cursor to a pointer. So that styles the track in Chrome. Now we want to do the thumb, which is this round part. Now again, we can't style it directly, so let's first select it with dash WebKit dash slider thumb, and we have to add WebKit dash appearance none. Okay, so now it completely goes away, but we can customize it now. Let's give it a height of 24 pixels and a width of 24 pixels, and we'll give it a background of white. So now you can see it's just a square. So you can add images, you can style this however you want. We're just gonna make it a circle, so let's say border dash radius 50%, which will turn it into a circle. I'm gonna give it a border 1 pixel solid purple, and it's off the track, it's too low, so let's say margin top, and let's do -7 pixels, so that'll push it up more. And I think that's really all I want to do. Now this border around it, we want to get rid of that. So let's take, actually let's put this up here. So we'll say range, and then when it's in its focus state, let's set the outline to none. Okay, so that gets rid of that ugly border. And again, if we check Firefox out, it still looks like this because we haven't added the prefix yet. All right, and I think that's it as far as the style goes for Chrome. So now what we'll do for Firefox, and let's add a comment right here. So this is for Chrome and Safari, and then I'm going to just copy what we did here with the track and the thumb, and let's say Firefox, paste that in. Now instead of WebKit slider runnable track, it's MOZ range track. So dash MOZ dash range dash track. And as far as the styles here, I'm gonna just keep what we have, and then for the range it's gonna be MOZ dash range dash thumb. I'm sorry, for the thumb, not the range. So it's the track and the thumb. Now I'm just going to save this and go to Firefox now, and you can see we have pretty much the same thing. For some reason it has this white background and I can't figure out how to get rid of that. So one thing we could do is increase the height on Firefox to 12 pixels, and the purple should cover the white. I guess we could do like 13, like that. So you might have to kind of mess around with it a little bit. Let's also add a cursor pointer to this right here. So we'll say cursor pointer there, and we'll add that up here as well on the WebKit. So it behaves a little different in other browsers, so you just want to be aware of that. Now for Microsoft, I mean, I don't have, Internet Explorer on this machine. I can't test it, but I'm just going to grab what we have for, we'll just copy what we did for Firefox. And let's say IE. So the prefix we want to use here is MS, and it's going to be ms-track. And this is going to be ms-thumb. And I mean, if you want to test it on Internet Explorer, you can. If it looks a little weird, you can of course change some of this stuff up. But yeah, I'm just going to keep it like that. So now we have the style down. Firefox looks good. I'll keep that open. Chrome. And of course, if you want to change colors or change the shape of this or the size of the thumb here, you can do that. But in the next video, we want to make this function so that this number changes depending on the value. Also, we want the position of the label to follow the thumb as we move it. So we'll get into that next. Okay, so now we want to add our JavaScript to do two things. We want the value to display in here. When we move this, that's not going to be too difficult. We also want the position of the label to follow the thumb, to be right above it. So that's going to be a little more complicated. So let's jump into our script here and let's get our range input. So it has an ID of range. So we'll do document.getElementById, get the ID of range. And then we want to add an event listener onto that input. So .event listener. And the event is going to be input. That'll fire off whenever we move the range slider. And we want to have an arrow function with our event object passed in here. And then we can get the value. Let's say const value equals e.target.value. So e.target represents the element that this event listener is on, which is the range. Now I do want this to convert to a number, so I'm just going to add a plus sign here. And that'll just give it the type of number. So then we'll go ahead and add it to the label. Now we can get the label, let's say const label, and we have access to e.target, which is the input. Now the label is directly after it, and it's basically the next sibling. So we're going to use the method called, or the property of next element sibling. That should give us the label. And then we can say label.inner HTML, and we can set that to the values. Now I'll save that, and when I move this, you'll see that it goes from 0 to 100, And that's, I mean, that's pretty simple. Now, for this to follow the thumb, we need to basically calculate the position of this label and keep it above the thumb. So this is going to be a little more difficult. So let's do that at the very end where we assign the label. And then we want to get the width of the range, which is actually set in the CSS file to 300 pixels. So let's say const range width, and there's a function called get computed style, and this will allow us to get we can actually get values from our CSS. Like the range is, the width is 300 pixels. That's what we want to get. So we want to get the computed style for e.target, which is the input, and then there's a method called get property value, and the property we want to get the value for is the width. So I'll go ahead and just console log here the range underscore width, and now if I open up my console and I fire that event, you can see it's 300 pixels. If I change in my CSS, if I change this to 400 and save and fire this off, you'll see it's 400. Alright, so I'm just going to set that back, and that gives us the range width. Now, we also need to account for the label width. So for that, let's actually just copy this, and we'll call this one, let's say, label width, and we want to get the computed style for the label. So instead of e.target, which is the input that the event listener's on, we want to get it for the label, and we want to get the width. Okay, so that'll give us, we can go ahead and console log that, and when I move this, we get 380 pixels. So it's going to stay the same because we're just getting the width of this and the width of this. Now both of these have px on them. I just want the number. So let's actually create another variable called num underscore width, and basically what I want to do here is just get the number for the range width. So let's first convert it to a number with a plus sign, and then we'll say the range width, which right now is just 300 pixels. So we're going to use dot substring and say 0, and then whatever the length of the range width. So let's say range underscore width dot length, because it could be anything. It could be 3 pixels, it could be 3 million pixels. So we want to get the length and then just subtract 2, because we're taking the px off, we're taking the pixel off. So now let's go down here and let's see what num width gives us. Get rid of that, and you can see it gives us 300, and it's a number. We also want the number width for the label, so let's call this, we'll say num underscore label underscore width, and actually I'll just copy this whole thing here, but instead of the range width here, we want the label width, and substring, and let's change this to label width, and then if we console log here num label width, you'll see we should get 380 as numbers. So now let's get the min and the max values, because remember we set that in the HTML. We set 0 for the min, 100 for the max. So we'll create a variable here called max and set that to e.target, and we can get it very simply with just max, and we want to convert it to a number, so we'll add a plus sign, and we can do the same for min. So min, set that to min, and we can test that out, min max, and we should get 0 and 100. Good, because you could set the min and max to anything. We want to make sure that we have those values. Now we need to use this information that we have to apply the left property to this to calculate it to follow the thumb, the ball here. Left is initially set on the label, where is it? Right here, to 110 pixels, which is right in the middle, but we want that to change depending on where the thumb is. So to do that, let's create a variable called left, and we want to do a little bit of calculation here. We're going to take the value, so whatever the current value is, 0 to 100, and we want to multiply that by whatever the num width is, and we want to divide that by the max, which, you know, in this case is going to be 100. And then we want to take that and subtract the num label width, which is the, you know, the number of whatever the width of the label, because we want this to work regardless of how wide the track is or the label. And we want to divide that by 2. So if we save that, actually let's just console log left and see what we get down here. So if I go all the way over, we get what, -40. If I go all the way this way, we get 260. Now let's apply that to the left CSS property of the label. So we can do that by saying label.style, and we want to set the left value. Now we can't just set it to left because that's a number. It has to be whatever px, like this, right? 110 pixels, not just 110. So let's make this, let's use backticks here and then pass in left here and then px. So now if I go and I move this, you can see that it moves along with the ball here. Now notice how it becomes off center as you move over on each side. We want to account for that, about 10 pixels. So there's a solution we can use. I'm just gonna bring this window over real quick. So this is a Stack Overflow post, and I'll copy this link and put it in the script. But this is to map a range of numbers to another range of numbers, and we've used this in another project in this course. I'm not sure of the exact order of the projects yet, so we might have used it already, we might have not. But basically, this scale function that someone created takes in a specific number, and then a min and a max, so an in min, in max, and then an out min and out max. So you can map a specific range. In our case, it'll be, you know, 0, 100, because that's our min and max, and then we'll map it to -10, I'm sorry, 10 and -10 to kind of make up for that difference. So I'm going to copy, actually let me just paste this link here, and I just want to comment that out, and then I'm going to grab this function here and put that in. All right, so we have our scale function, and then we can just go back up to our calculation here and just add to that scale, which takes in first a num, which is going to be our value, and then a min and a max, which in our case is going to be min and max. In our case is 0 and 100, and we want to map to 10 and -10. So if we save that and we try this again, now you'll see that it always stays in the middle, okay, instead of veering off to the side. So I know that there's quite a bit to this just to get this little bit of functionality, but now you can use this in applications. You have this nice little widget, and of course you can style it, you know, however you want. But that's going to be it for this project. I will see you in the next one.